to take this into a little bit of a parenting thing. If you are a mom of teenagers or a dad of teenagers, so as your kids get a little bit older, I talked a little bit about that yesterday on my video about the challenge to find that time to connect with your kids when they're little. So I have a 9-year-old. She is always all over me. She is hugging me. She's in my face. She's in my physical space all the time. So building that connection with her happens totally naturally, right? We just are around each other all the time. She wants to be around me. She wants to be attached to me. She wants to show love. She wants me to spend time with her. And what's really hard is as those same kids get a little bit older, I find that time is a lot harder. You don't quite see the same, they're not in your space quite so much, whether it's screen time. My kids do have phones and are on them, but we have some parameters around acceptable screen use in our house. But I find that everybody's just out of the house. And so for us, really that time to connect with my teenagers is coming later and later. And so for me, it's coming at, 9 o'clock at night is when finally maybe everybody has come home. I mean, I have one daughter who doesn't get home till 10 or 10:30 from basketball practice. And so if I didn't stay awake and if I didn't make that time in the evening, which if you have teenagers, you might kind of get it, that's kind of their hour. They really, that evening time, nighttime hours is when I have found for my guys, they're way more receptive to talking about things, about hanging out with you, and about having some one-on-one time with you. And that's been really special time for me. So that evening time, if you have teenagers, if you can try to connect with them at that time, I think you'll get some really great moments out of them and from them. So because of that, then the early morning time isn't going to work because, again, I need to survive. So I need my 8 hours of sleep. Everybody does. And it's a lie to think that you can survive on 5 or 6 hours a night. That's not healthy for you, and that's not setting you up. I mean, yes, when you have infants, you survive, but you only survive. You don't thrive, right? It's not until those kids get into you get some of your sleep back that you start to be able to thrive as a mother and really not just worry about keeping your little baby alive and you alive and the house not burnt down, right? All of those things. And so that was my tip today. I just really wanted to talk about, I think we as parents have to go to where our kids are in order to find those times to connect with them. And it can be tough and it can change our lives a little bit, but I think it's okay to tweak those things. So I may not get up super early, but I'm staying up late to build that connection because for me in my life, one of my number one things that brings me joy and brings me contentment and brings me happiness and fulfillment is my relationship with my children and my relationship with my husband. And so those may not be like numbers and business and money that's coming into the household, but they are what fulfills me. And I do have other goals around income and money and business goals, but another part of my life really is about those connections and what kind of job I think I'm doing as a mother, because it is a job. It's a lot of hard work. And so that's my tip for today, that you have to meet your children where they are. You might have a child who really enjoys early mornings with you and is up at 5 a.m. and maybe they're the one child out of your 3 kids that wakes up every day at 5 a.m. and wants to be up doing stuff. So rather than trying to squash that, maybe you as a parent can meet them at that 5 a.m. time and have some one-on-one time with your child at that time, because every child needs to make sure that they're having their one-on-one time with you. That was my second tip for the day today, is making sure that if you're seeing, not making sure, I'm just sharing my story and my experience, but is if you have children who are showing some behaviors around different things. I did a post yesterday on anxiety. It was a graphic that I stole or I borrowed or I reposted from someone else, and it's had by far my most engagement ever on Instagram. And I think that really speaks to how prolific mental health is in our society and in our teenagers and in our children, and that in our adults, us as moms and dads and just people in the university or school or working in marriages and not in relationships, is how prolific mental health is as an issue, and that graphic that's been shared and been tagged and been commented on, I think it has like a 10,000 something reach on Instagram, which is like 100 times more than anything else that I've ever posted. I think that really speaks to it. And so if you have a child, what I was going to say is, if you look at that graphic and you see the different behaviors that it talks about, if you see some of those behaviors in your children, maybe it's time to think about reconnecting. I've talked to lots of parents who have said, when they have a child who seems to be acting out or doing some sort of behavior that's not the norm, like isn't where they normally sit in their life, but it's like above or below in regards to their the way that they act, that maybe that means that it's time that they need some one-on-one time with you. They need to feel that reconnection. They need to feel a part of the family. One of the best things that I ever heard or read that I think has really made a big difference with my family and with my kids was, I read somewhere that if you're worried about like your kids, back when I was younger, it was like kids would run away from home and like would leave. Like my best friend in grade 7, she ended up between grade 7 and the end of grade 8 or grade 9, so within a year or so, she went from living in a home with a mom and a dad and a brother, really like middle class, what we would consider sort of straight and narrow kind of normal house, to being like at 14 then having a boyfriend who was in his 20s, living in a foster home, on drugs and alcohol, and just like total 180. And that really scared me as I got older and I became a parent, because I have all these experiences of kids that really struggled with their families. And somebody told me once that the number one thing that you need to do with your kids is make sure that they know how needed they are in your family. This is a big one. So do your children feel like they're needed in your family? And that stuck with me. So at a young age, I would say things to my kids like, I couldn't do this without you. I need your help. And that kind of goes to the reason why my kids do chores and why my kids have responsibilities, is from a very young age, it was like, I need your help. This family would not be the same if you weren't a part of the family. If you weren't, here helping me, I wouldn't be able to do it. And I think that was, that's been a big thing in regards to making sure that the kids feel connected to the family, because there's ups and downs and there's squabbling. Like my kids fight and yell at each other and they're screaming. We're a normal family, but I think that connection to the home is what I've really worked hard along with my husband to create and connect in the family. And I think that's made a huge difference. And that's why, like at night at 10 p.m. when they come home, I have to keep that connection when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, because when she's 18, she's going to be gone off to university, and that connection is going to even decrease. I have a couple of mom friends that are on here, whose daughters and sons are off at university for the first year. So they've been gone for just like a month, right? It's the beginning of October. They're just coming home for Thanksgiving. And it's so weird for them, because they're not there in the day-to-day with their kids, but yet the kids are still calling, still asking for questions, venting, a little bit, I heard from a couple parents, a little bit self-centered. So they're not calling mom and dad to say, hey, how are you? They're calling to unleash all of the stress that they have and to vent to their safe people in their life, which is, I think, totally normal. And we are, listen, and we kind of help them through that next season of their life. So those are just a couple thoughts that I have today about parenting and about where I was at yesterday with regards to keeping promises to myself, because even though I'm working really, really hard on this parenting gig to try and raise really thoughtful and empathetic and successful humans for the future of the world, because we know we need them out there,